Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we are going to do an overview of the new Ace trucks, which are the AF1, which I got right here. And there's not going to be any skating or review of it just because I got them. A review video will come out in 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm making a separate video just so I don't have a 20-minute long video that you guys have to sit through. Anyways, let's get right into it. So the trucks were actually sent to me by a viewer who wanted me to try them out and give my honest opinion about them. So thank you very much for that. Now, this is what comes into the box. It was ordered directly from Ace's website. So you get a pair of trucks, a bunch of stickers, some wax, and a little placard that has Ronnie Sandoval on it. And on the back, you can see what's the new features of the new truck. So it talks about a lot of details, bushings, pivot cups, axle rethreaders, and just all of that. And we're going to take a look at every one of these. Each of the trucks also comes in this plastic bag, one for each truck. It's pretty neat detail, but it is fancy trash in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and move all these out the way so we can focus on what really matters, is the trucks. Right, so here we have the trucks, and when you open them out the box, they're going to come like this. You have 2 axle nuts on each side of the axle. You have 2 axle nuts, and we'll take a look at them, and a rethreader. And you get one for each truck. So I got one for this truck, and then one for this truck. And that's pretty neat that they add these. They do sell them separately along with a kingpin rethreader. But, it's nice that they give you 2 of them, so you don't have to go buy them separately. Now, we are going to take this one out the way, so we can focus on this truck. Right, so I went ahead and disassembled the truck. And what we're going to do is going to take a look at each of the parts. Now, let's go ahead and start off with the hanger. Right, so I have the hanger in my hand, and let's go over some of the little details first. So, the one I have is the new, not really the new, but the 55 size. And with the classics, they're a different size. They're a 9-inch axle, but with the AF1s, the 55s are actually 8.5-inch axle. And you can see that they did etch this onto the axle, and this doesn't appear on camera. I will include a better picture. So you also notice that the pivot seems a lot more exaggerated, and it's actually about the same size as an Indy. So this is a hanger of an Indy 161, and if we turn them over like this, they're about the same height. Here's the difference. This is as low as I can get it. But basically, they're about the same height, and the reason why the Ace one seems a lot more bigger and larger and exaggerated is because the Indy 169s have a much flared wing over here to help support the axle. While the Ace one still has that flare, but it's not as exaggerated as the 169s. Now, granted, they are 2 different sizes, but this is common across all Ace models. Now, if you ever skated Aces before, you'll know that the hanger isn't straight across. It actually makes a convex shape. So it's kind of an upside down U shape. And the theory of this is supposed to help you cross-lock into grinds and all that. Now, they have not done away with this design. The hanger is not straight. It's still a bit curved. Now, if you like this, then good for you. If you don't, well, it's too bad for you. But hey, that does mean you get a little bit more metal on the hanger. And I'll go ahead and show what I mean by this. So now that I have the hanger flying on the table with the hanger face down, you will see how the light comes through here, stops here, and just keeps, and then does the same on the side. Now you have some light here, but that's just because of the hole in the hanger. Now if I adjust it properly, you'll see that the light shines through on the sides, but in the middle, it is dark because it is making contact with the table. So the hanger is not straight across. So one of the things I also want to point out is that with the regular Aces, the classics as they call it now, is that the end of the hanger was a little bit flared out. So this allows you to get away with not using the speed rings. So these guys. And you could have your wheel set in a little bit closer to the hanger if you wanted to. Now it seems like that they still have this design, but it's a lot less exaggerated than what you will usually see on the normal Aces. And you can see that it does level out a little bit. And if I recall correctly, on the normal Aces, it was a lot more exaggerated than this. Now, for comparison of a normal Indie, as you can see, it's just straight across. There's no gradual level out like the Aces do. You just have this flat surface at a 90-degree cut and then the hanger. One more time to show you the difference. As you can see, hanger starts to level out a bit and then comes to the axle flat. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the base plate. Right? So as you can see, there's a lot of neat details. Aces embossed on the bottom. The kingpin says AF1. And the logo is different. It has this logo instead of Ace printed vertically and in a different font. And you still have that checkerboard logo thing. Now, apparently the pivot cup is different. It's supposed to be a lot better, and I'm not sure how to really judge that without skating these. Now, I do have a worn out Indie pivot cup for scale. And with the classic Aces, I do remember that the Indie pivot cup slid in a bit too well, and it made me think that it was a bit smaller. The hole was a bit bigger than what the Indie's pivot cup was designed for. So I'm gonna see if I can replace these and put my Indie pivot cup in there. And for the pivot cup, it's actually really easy to take out because you can pretty much just tap it out, just like this. And it's out. You don't need to tug at it, use pliers or anything. And that's pretty neat if you bust your pivot cups. Now, I'm gonna put in the Indie pivot cup. Slides in really, really easily, just like that. And getting it out is even easier. Just took one tap. Now, the Indie pivot cups are probably going to fit. Looks like that they are basically the same size. Granted, this one is a lot more worn out. And it shouldn't matter too much since your hanger is going to pretty much keep these in place by pressing it down. And as you can see, the Indie pivot cup's a little bit taller, but I think this is more due to it being a lot more worn out than this one. Right, so I think that's it for the base plate. Now let's move on to some of the finer details of the truck. Now, let's move on to the bushings. So they did change the bushings. Now starting off with the diameter of the bushings, so how hard it is or how soft it is, depending. The classic Aces came with the top bushing at 91A, and the bottom bushing came at 86A. Now, according to Ace's website, both bushings are 96A for the new AF1s, and that is kind of a huge change. I don't know how it's going to perform or affect the turn. But from the sounds of it, just on first impressions, it might make the turn a lot less carvy, I should say, not more. Now, the top one on the classics is 12 millimeters and the bottom is 14 millimeters. And I have a caliper to see if there has been any changes to the height of these. So let's go ahead and zero that out. And it's still going to give about a margin of error of 0.02. Right? So let's go ahead and start with the top one. Right? So round it up about 12 millimeters. That little bit difference isn't going to make a difference. So let's just say 12 millimeters. And also keep in mind that this caliper does have a little bit margin of error. Right? Let's go ahead, zero that out again. And then measure the bottom bushing. Right? So round it up about 15 millimeters. Now that is a little bit higher than the classic bushing, but honestly, I don't believe that it is going to make that much of a difference. Right? Now for the cup washers, they appear to be the same. they fit pretty well with the bushings. Pretty much on par, doesn't give it too much space to wiggle around. Right, so that's for the bushings. So just looking at it by itself, I don't know how it performs. I will need to skate it and then break them in and all that, and then I will go more in depth into these in the next review video. Right, moving on to the nuts. Right, so the speed rings and the kingpin nut are exactly the same thing, so not going to go over these. What we are going to go over is the rethreader and the axle nut. So let's go over the axle nut first. This is Ace's second time at trying to redesign the axle nuts, making a simple thing even more complex. And for this one, it's actually really, really interesting. So you can see that the threads are much, much different than what a normal axle nut is supposed to look like. And it has 4 threadings on every side. And then the nylon is red. Now, when I put the axle nut on, it goes on very nice, and then it starts to give resistance once the threads meets the nylon, just like any axle nut should. So that gives me confidence in how these are supporting. So it's interesting. I'm pretty psyched to see how this is going to play out and if these self-rethreading axle nuts actually work out. Now for the rethreader, it's pretty much the same thing as the axle nuts. You have 4 on each side. The inside looks the same. The only thing that's different is it does not have the nylon. So when you put the thing on, it is just going to keep going since there's no nylon for it to resist on. And it only stops when I reach the end of axle. Right? And I'm kind of excited about it because usually for rethreaders, you will need something like this, like a pig wheels tool. And this giant thing. And when it's designed like this, you need to take the hanger off or the truck off, or else the tool makes contact with the board and you can't get it down all the way. Now with this, it's designed to be used with your skate tool. You're just supposed to put it in there, and then carefully line up with threads, and then just keep axling it and rethreading it, just like that. Now they do sell separately the kingpin rethreader, and that I'm even more excited for. I might get a pair for myself because a lot of some tools come with the axle rethreader, but not one for the kingpin. And when you start doing like a lot of slappies, like grinding like really hard coping or whatnot, and your hanger wears down, the kingpin starts to wear down. And when you can't re-axle the kingpin, then you can't get the nut off, you can't change your bushings, all of that. And the only die, which is this called, that I know of is a very old consolidated tool. And that's very old. No one sells them anymore, not many people know about them. So yeah, this is a very nice touch. I don't know about the axle nuts though. If they turn out to not be secure and all that, and you're going to have to replace the axle nuts. And that's not good, because this is actually a more expensive truck than the classics. Right, so now we are going to take a look at the truck's wheelbase. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with what the wheelbase is, that's a whole different video topic. But to really sum it up really fast, your wheelbase is from this hole to this hole measured. And then your actual wheelbase is when you get your trucks, and it's measured from middle of axle to middle of axle. Now, a short wheelbase gives you more carve, more turn, while a longer wheelbase gives you a lot more stability at the cost of turn. This Jack's wheelbase is 14 inches. Right? And what we are going to be comparing these to is the pair of Indy 169s. Now I've read online that there has been reports that Ace changed the wheelbase by stretching it out a bit more to match it with Indies, and a lot of people are afraid of that change. Now, let's see if this is true. So what we're going to do is going to mount the trucks with the holes like that. Makes it secure. And obviously I am putting the hardware backwards, but I'm not skating these yet. This is simply just for measurement demonstration. And as you can also see, I have the axle nuts off. So we can get an even accurater measurement. Right? So middle of axle to middle of axle. So based on this deck with a 14 1/4 wheelbase, I am getting about 17 1/4 measurements. Now, let's compare it with the Indy 169s. Now we're going to do the same exact process. This time it's a lot easier since these are pretty worn, but the axle still stays strong. Right, now let's go ahead and measure them. I am getting measurements of about 17 3/8. So these are definitely based off my measurements. As you can see, the wheelbase of the Aces have not matched the Indies. They are about 1/8 inch difference, with the Aces wheelbase still being shorter than Independence wheelbase. Now, I do not have a pair of Ace Classics to compare, and if someone does, please leave the measurements in the comments, as that would help out a lot of people. Right, so let's go over the height of the trucks. Now, the trucks on the website say that they are 2.1 inches or 53 millimeters in height. Now, let me go ahead and double check that using my tape measure. So, the way you are supposed to measure the truck is from the bottom of the base plate to the middle of the hanger, of the axle, I mean. Right, so based on my measurements, I am getting measurements of about 2 1/8. So right where my fingernail is. Now, when you convert this inches from millimeters, you actually get about 55 millimeters in height with a 0.372. Now, how I think Ace got the lower height is they took a caliper and then measured it from the bottom to the top of the hanger. And then that's where you get the 53 millimeters as listed on the website. But the caliper does not start its measurements from here. It starts the measurements from the 0. Now, obviously, if I am wrong, please correct me on this. This is how I learned how. Right, camera ran out of memory right there. But as I was saying, if I am wrong about how I'm measuring these, please correct me in the comments. As far as I know, I am measuring these the correct way, and I have shown how Ace might have gotten these measurements. Now, Independents are 55 millimeters in height, and when you put them side by side, these guys appear to be the same height. So that is another double-checked fact. So it does appear to be taller than advertised. And again, if I am wrong about my measurements, please let me know. Right, to double check how I measure my trucks. Now these are Independent 169s, and the website on NHS lists them as 55 millimeters high. And again, I'm going to measure from the bottom of the base plate to the middle of the axle. And I am getting measurements of about 2 1/8. So same exact as the Aces. And that is where my fingernail is, right there. That's the measurements I have. Now, checking back, it is indeed about 55 millimeters. So I can say that based on how other brands do it, how I measure the trucks is accurate. So these would be the same size, same height as an independent truck. Right, so that has been an overview of the Ace AF1s. And you have noticed that I have not gone over how heavy these are, and that is because I do not have a kitchen scale. And if someone has these trucks and wants to measure them, please do. According to their website, each truck is supposed to be 14 ounces. And I would love to double check that, but I do not have a good scale for that. Anyways, please expect an actual review of these trucks in the coming weeks. I do need to spend a good amount of time on them before I can give any final conclusive thoughts. Anyways, this has been yet another video. If you think I missed anything, I need to make corrections or whatnot, please let me know in the comments and I will try to address all of them. Anyways, have a wonderful day and I hope this has helped you some.